The other bit of news, the car that's sitting outside, courtesy of Williams, is a real racing car. It's not a show car. So I would ask you just to respect that. So please don't lean on the rear wing, and please don't sort of pull any bits off of it, because it is an actual race car. It's worth an awful lot of money. It's not just a show car. It's actually Nelson Piquet Jr.'s car from last year's. So in terms of what's been going on over the last year, it's just been a phenomenal year. And Paul just told me that we're actually a record in terms of delegates this year. Last year I thought we'd done well. We hit just under 200 people. This year we're over 200. We're nearly at 230 delegates this year. So thank you very much for supporting the event. We appreciate you coming. This event is only as good as the membership. It is a member event. As you know, we are a networking organisation, so we can only do things with the support from you. So I really do thank you very much for supporting the event, and hope that you really do get value out of today. It's been a year of change. For me personally, I retired from my day job at Vistion back in January, so I'm now a pensioner. Technically, although I don't feel old enough to retire. So I'm actually doing this now with a lot more time available to me. And the reason I continue to work on this is, although I was doing it as a part-time piece to my previous job, I was enjoying this so much, and I think this is such an important part of the industry that I wanted to continue to be part of that. And I'm delighted that the guys from TechWorks allowed me to continue to do this. So I appreciate the support from that. In terms of what's going on in the industry, this last 12 months has been an absolute phenomenal change. We did some research, and I'm going to have to just look at my notes to remember the number, but the global ECU business in 2020 is about $280 billion. That's expected to grow by 2024 to $400 billion. So we go from $220 billion to $400 billion in 4 years. That's a phenomenal growth in the electronic control environment within automotive. And therefore that you can see what both the challenges and opportunities that's going to bring. And in terms of when you look at where is the major growth areas, there are two things that stick out really, really significantly. One is the growth of electrification of vehicles. So for us, that really sees a growth in power electronics. So we're seeing a massive growth in power electronics. And the other one is around the support for the connected and autonomous vehicle groups that we're seeing. So the other growth is around ADAS and AV. They're the two biggest growth areas that we're seeing that are driving a fundamental change in vehicle development, vehicle architectures, and the growth of ECUs in the vehicle domain. So that's kind of how the industry is changing. The other thing that we did this year is we identified that within the UK we're very well positioned. There's actually over 600 companies that are working in the electronic space in the UK. And over half of those are already engaged in the automotive environment, in the automotive sector. And then if you look at the companies that are on the adjacencies, so some of the companies that are members here today that are getting into automotive for the first time, we're seeing a significant growth in the capability in the UK. And Paul mentioned it. So one of the things, if you look, you can pick up this brochure here. It's a report that Rob and I did for Innovate UK. And it highlights a couple of those things that we've been looking at in terms of what the growth is for the industry and what the opportunities are. It's also available electronically on our website, so if you don't want to carry a bit of paper around with you, it's available on the website to download. And we might sell out, I suspect, because I've seen a lot of people picking these up already. In terms of what we've been doing, I've got 5 slides. Last year I had 4 slides. This year I've got 5. So we've been busier in the last 12 months than we were in the previous 12 months. And one of the biggest things that we continue to do is engage with the Automotive Council, and I'm absolutely delighted with the relationship that we've got with the Automotive Council UK, and there's a number of members of the senior team of the Automotive Council in the room today. And the reason it's so important for us is because as the government sets its industrial strategy and it sets the requirements for industry, it's got a body to talk to that's representing the industry. So the Automotive Council is representing the entire automotive industry in the UK, and is looking to accelerate the growth, opportunities, jobs, and all the great things that come with that. But what it also needs is help from expert groups. And what we've been able to do is secure ourselves as the go-to group, the organisation that the Automotive Council talks to when they want to talk about automotive electronics. And I'm absolutely delighted to see that actually cemented in a relationship that we now have with the Automotive Council. And you can see from here that some of the things that we've done with the Auto Council this year We continue to be part of the Enabling Roadmaps Development Group on the ICV. There's a number of roadmaps that have been developed, and this is another document. I don't know if you guys have seen this. This is the Automotive Council's publication of roadmaps, and again, this is available for download from the Automotive Council's website. And you'll see there's a number of roadmaps in here, of which 4 of them were directly contributed to by people in this room who actually provided input into the roadmap. So take a look at that. That is a really good outline of what's going on. I was delighted, although it was kind of timely with my retirement. I retired on the 31st of January. I think Tony sent me an email on the 1st of Feb saying, now that you're a free man, how would you like to come along and be the lead for power electronics on the Automotive Council? Which I was delighted to do, because part of the group that we have here, obviously one of the biggest growth areas is power electronics. And we recognise that we've got a group of expertise in this area, and we recognise it's a growing need. And with the role that Tony's now got with Faraday, it fits in really nicely. So I'm actually now the official lead, working with Gary Wilson. Gary's got the lead for electrification within the Automotive Council, and one of the legs within that is the power electronics. And I'm delighted to be the representative on the Auto Council supporting that. And one of the things you'll see on there, one of the big challenges that's been set this year was the Stevenson Challenge. You may be familiar that one of the government International Strategy Challenge Fund submissions was a call for different submissions. This is a cross-sector development that's been put in to support the growth of power, electronics, motors and drives, so PEMD, called the Stevenson Challenge, and we were delighted to be able to support that along with our colleagues from the APC. So there's people here who understand this in some detail, and I think they're sitting in the middle around the back there, if I can see Gary and Philip over there. We also have been very heavily involved in cybersecurity. Every discussion that we have around software and electronics leads to a discussion on cybersecurity. And the Auto Council had started some work on cybersecurity, and we also had some work going on with cybersecurity. And after a little while, we decided that actually it made sense to actually combine those two forces together. So the work that we were originally leading within AESIN is now actually the lead group that's actually working as part of the Auto Council to deliver some of the cybersecurity developments that are going on. And then finally, we continue to work with some senior members of the Automotive Council on potentially laying out a sector deal for automotive electronics. So we've seen one being supported in terms of Stevenson for the work that was done on the motors and drives. Tony's leading a successful bid of the Faraday Challenge. I'm sure you know the Faraday Challenge related to batteries. We think there's a big enough requirement and growth area in the industry for a sector deal potentially on automotive electronics. So we're currently laying out the plans to do that as well. So we'll keep you involved and briefed on what's going on there. But as you can see, just with the Automotive Council, it's been a busy year. And we continue to support them, and we continue to get great support from them. The other thing, in this country, we're extremely lucky to have a government, and you may not think this at the moment with all the challenges going, but we're extremely lucky to have a government that has actually published an industrial strategy. And when you talk around the world, there are a number of countries that don't have a global or a national strategy for their countries. Even in the United States, they don't have a federal industrial strategy. Most of the individual states have strategies that are dependent for their states, but they don't have a joined-up strategy. What we do have in the UK is an industrial strategy that's been published by the government, which means that organisations like the Auto Council can line up behind that, and organisations like AESIN have something to target. And I'm sure you're all aware that the government put into place the Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles, headed by Ian Forbes, who was here last year. And one of the things that we find is by having that direct conversation with Ian and his team means that we can actually start to set direction for what we're working on here. So it's aligned with government, it's aligned with strategy, it's not going off doing something around on the fringes. And again, as part of the discussion that we've been having over the last 12 months, what we've seen is we've been invited into some of the closed door meetings with government as they start to set out what some of the calls should look like. So I'm sure you're all familiar with some of the CAV calls. We were actually instrumental in setting the agenda for some of those. Clearly, we didn't tell the government exactly what it is, but they were seeking our opinion of what was going on in our industry, what was important, what potentially should the government be looking to invest in, where were the opportunities for growth in the UK and so on. So we do continue to support the government. I had the pleasure of having lunch with Jess Norman at the launch of the government's Call for Evidence paper, and I had the opportunity to tell him how important automotive electronics is to the industry and how important it is to this country. And it's something which with most politicians, they kind of glaze over when you talk about software and electronics. And I didn't get that from Jess. Jess actually asked me a few searching questions around, well, what about system modelling? What about some of the architecture? I thought this guy's quite well informed. So we do have somebody inside government. We also had Richard Harrington, who attended Cenex. You know, he's heavily engaged. So we are seeing good engagement between the ministers in Westminster and also some of the work where they're doing. And I'm pleased to say that AESIN is right in the heart of that. We're not just kind of scratching at the side. We're actually in there having those deep and meaningful discussions. We did submit a paper for the Call for Evidence. There was recently a Future Mobility Call for Evidence sent out by the government. We did put an AESIN response in based on the responses that we had from you guys to a questionnaire that was put out last year, and we were able to collect a lot of that information and respond back to the government. Apparently we don't get a, yes, you've done very well, it gets wrapped up into a strategy. So what we're looking for is in the November timeframe, when the government announces its next section of the strategy, there will be a significant piece of automotive electronics in there, hopefully, if they've listened to what we've said. I'm also on the IDP 15 working group, which is an OLEV Innovate UK KTN type body that's looking at setting up various calls, and I'm also a member of the government workshop on safety and security. And then finally, what I'm absolutely delighted to be able to say today is that we have Daniel Ruiz here from Meridian. And this year we've formally cemented our relationship. And in fact, there's a press release going out today that we're signing a multi-year memorandum of understanding between Meridian and AESIN to say that we will be the choice go-to organisation when it comes to all things automotive electronics. So I'm delighted that Daniel's here. And Daniel will talk a little bit more about that later as he goes through his presentation. We had a busy time at Cenex. For those of you who were able to get down to Millbrook earlier this year, probably the best Cenex show that we've had for many, many years. And that's another show that just grows and grows and grows and is becoming the de facto go-to show for all things in terms of technology. It grew up from low carbon, as the name suggests, low carbon vehicles. But one of the things that we were able to do this year was work with Rob Evans from Cenex to actually bring in automotive electronics and CAV to the agenda. And we had a session on the end of the second day, which was actually sold out. We were amazed that everybody had stayed. We had a packed room, and we were able to give a presentation that basically outlines the importance of automotive electronics to the industry. And we clearly were hitting the right spot because we had a very well-attended session there. So that was really good that we were able to participate in that. We continue to work with Meridian and with BSI to try and lay out some of the standards that are required in terms of functional safety. As we move through ISO 26262, we look at that, we realise that actually isn't going to cut the mustard in terms of next generation vehicles, so we need to start looking at what standards need to be developed and put into place. So there's a 2-day workshop was held to look at that, which was very well received. We had some really great success on the UK site programme, which is led by Vistion, but is part of a consortium with a number of partners, and they actually had the live track trials this year. So if you remember last year, we had a demonstration outside with a demonstrator vehicle, which was showing how the technology was going to work. This year, I was actually fortunate enough to go around the track at Jaguar and at Gaydon and was able to actually go into one of these vehicles that was actually using this technology in a real-world environment. So we can see the technology moving from an initial whiteboard discussion some 3 years ago to actually sitting in a vehicle and actually seeing the technology being deployed, which is just a fantastic achievement, and we're delighted that we were able to be part of that. I mentioned the capability report. We published that, and you can take a copy of that with you. So that was a bit of work that we did with Innovate UK. And then in terms of the work streams, each of our work streams continues to be very busy. And what astounds me is all of this work is done on a voluntary basis. It's run by our members, for the members, and we continue to get fantastic engagement and fantastic delivery from these work streams. And considering it's all done on a voluntary basis, it's absolutely amazing in terms of what these guys are achieving. So the more electric powertrain work stream is led by Will Drew from Ricardo. And these guys are really focusing on sort of systems and architectures and working alongside supporting things like the Stevenson Challenge when we're pushing in the growth of more electric powertrain and the development of the electronics as it goes into that. So that was something. Alongside the Power Electronics group, you saw earlier from Paul that there's a number of work streams. The Power Electronics group supports us as a sister organisation, and that's what makes us so strong in terms of things like supporting the Stevenson Challenge, because we've got the ability to call on both the power experience across industry and also the automotive experience from the team that we have here. Probably our busiest group, as you'd imagine, is the ADAS and AV work stream, which is led by Alan Walker from AVL and co-chaired by Rob Green. And this is really now started to become a powerhouse in terms of what's going on, and we're starting to see significant developments in this group. And we're actually at a point now where, as part of our membership, we're actually getting called into some of the major OEMs now, where we've had some sort of general discussions as a group. We're now getting to a point now that the OEMs are saying, well, we now need to start thinking seriously about what we're going to do in terms of our ADAS and AV development as we go through the level 3, level 4, level 5 transitions in terms of what that means. And we've been able to hold a number of successful workshops with a number of our major partners and our major members. That is a really, really busy group, and there's a complete work stream on that later today. I talked about the standards. I mean, we continue to work with standards. We don't want to become a standards body, but we do think that we need to be pushing the agenda on standards, particularly as we trip over some of the issues as we go through some of the development work. And we're feeding that into people like BSI, and we're working alongside some of the other groups to try and help that. And then I just want to stop for a second here, and this is almost going to be a question to you. Paul and I had the pleasure of going to Munich last week. We were hosted by Audi at a conference that they have, which was run by SEMI. SEMI is a similar organisation, for those who don't know, to NMI. It came from the semiconductor world. It's a global organisation. And they've started to hook up. They've realised that semiconductors are obviously very prevalent in automotive. And they thought that they ought to have a group that put together semiconductors and automotive. And then when they looked around, they realised that there was a group out there already doing it, which is obviously us. So Paul and I were invited. There was people there from Audi, from VW, from ST, a number of different organisations. And they're about 4 years behind us, I would say, in terms of their thinking, what they're trying to do. A lot of the ideas that they were having are things that we've already achieved here as an organisation. So one of the things they've asked us to do, because where we are, is form a formal partnership between AESIN and SEMI, which means that if we agree to do that, it means that the remit of our members goes from being a UK-based organisation to one that's starting to branch out initially into Europe, but ultimately globally. And that's a double-edged sword. I think the benefits and the strengths of that is that it gives a lot of our members global reach. And certainly for the OEMs, our OEMs don't develop products that are only based for the UK. So I think the OEMs would benefit significantly if we do branch into Europe, and by having Audi, BMW, VW and so on as part of that group means that there's a bigger resource pool to call on in terms of development. The downside of it is that we would potentially lose some of the UK focus because we would be working alongside some of the groups in Europe. So the question for this group is there any major objection for us to partnering with SEMI as we go forward? And does anybody in the room here have any concerns about doing that? Now, you don't need to answer that now, but if you have any major concerns, can you come and find either me or Paul by the end of today? Because what we'd like to be able to do is go back to the SEMI organisation based on the request that they've asked us in terms of joining up, to go through with either a yes or no. I said that I thought it was a good idea, Paul thinks it's a good idea, but we said we would ask the membership because ultimately we're representing you. And if you want us to stay focused on just the UK, we will. But if you want us to branch out and put our arms around Europe as well, then we'll do that as well. So have a think about that as you go through the day. And please let me know if you've got any objection to us moving forward with that. In terms of the final bits of the work stream, Peter Davis from Thales is continuing to lead our work stream on the IoT, on the automotive security. I think probably automotive security is going to be the biggest topic that we talk about in the next 12 months. I suspect to be standing here in 12 months' time, hopefully telling you about all the things that we got involved in terms of automotive security. Had the pleasure of addressing the senior team at the Automotive Council last week, I think it was. And the biggest topic that came up was how do we address the issues that we're seeing around cybersecurity and the issues around automotive security? Because as you peel back the onion in terms of security in software and the prevalence of software that's going to be growing at 100 times as we move from level 3 to level 4 autonomy, that's just opening up a huge area of risk, but also a huge area of opportunity. And we are so fortunate to have Peter on our team. I'm not allowed to tell you what Peter does, but Peter has got a huge amount of experience in security for the country, and we can draw on that experience. And he asks the very searching questions. And there was one particular OEM who came to one of the sessions that Peter did. And apart from him saying that Peter made his head hurt, the second thing was it made him really be concerned about how vulnerable some of his software potentially is. So it really is something that I think is going to be a growth area, but it's also a massive strength. So we're going to be addressing that significantly in conjunction with the Automotive Council and the IoT Foundation along with John's group. So I'm really looking forward to working on that over the next 12 months or so. We mentioned software. Can't have a conference like this without mentioning software. We do have a software work stream. Mike has gone through some remodelling of that group, primarily because we've had some personnel changes. So we've had a couple of false starts on the software group, but I think we're in good shape now. We've found some people who've got a bit more time to put to this. And as we move towards a complex, synchronous, multi-partner software partnership, thank you, Tony, we will continue to develop the software needs and try to understand some of the things that we need to address as we go through. And again, there's an entire track on that today, so if you really want to know a lot more detail about that, then you can go and see Mike's session later today. Finally, I've got 1 minute left. Finally, we know that skills continues to be a hot topic. I think probably everybody that we've spoken to in the industry is concerned with the rate of change that we've got in terms of automotive electronics and software development and cybersecurity and access to the right skills. I know a number of the major OEMs are struggling to recruit. They're also reskilling a lot of their people, and we've been working, Paul's been down to Essex to work with one OEM, and we're working through how we can potentially reskill some of the workforce that they have as we move forward, and we're seeing this in other areas as well. So we have great engagement through Coventry University, through the UK Skills Foundation, through Warwick Manufacturing Group, and through SEMI. And that's something that is leading to hopefully what we call the AESIN Academy. So we're starting to build up potentially a group of educators that can start to put programs together that enable us to have a fast start in terms of reskilling a lot of people in this space. And then finally, we launched our 2018 capability directory. So this is it. So if you want to pick your copy up from outside, this outlines essentially the key companies that are being part of the capability and gives you a bit of an overview of what they're doing. So this has been updated for this year, so it's fresh for this year. I can't really move on without saying a massive thank you to Paul and the entire team at TechWorks. Sophie, Angela and Ronan have put this together. They were here, we left here about 8 o'clock last night, and they were still here putting this event together for us, making sure everything was in place, everything was ready. So I would like to give them a round of applause and say thank you to all of them. And thank you to you. As I said at my opening few words, this event is only as good as the people who attend it. And it's all done on a voluntary basis, and all the presentations are all being given by our members, and that's absolutely fantastic. So I hope you have a very enjoyable day. If there's anything that you need, then come and see Paul or myself, and we'll hope to fix that for you. So thank you very much.